Hello and welcome back to the FreeMelon Society, my lovely students. I'm Eli Martyr. Thank you so much for joining me here once again on the FreeMelon Society. We're going to be jumping back into the secret classroom and we're going to be talking about childhood development, a guide to the raising of children in the early years of life from the perspective of natural hygiene. This is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. It was suggested to me by many of you out there, so I'm really excited to put this together for you. And it's an important one. So essentially, what I'm going to be giving you today are the guidelines and the protocols as taught by Herbert Shelton in his hygienic system. Okay? From his hygienic system and from the hygienic care of children. Okay, one of his many books. And so we're going to go through how exactly it is that we can actually raise children and nourish ourselves with a clean, healthy, raw food only diet. And this is so critical because current prevailing myth is that you can't raise, well, yourself and also raise children on what is called a restrictive diet of only species specific foods, right? We're told that this is not healthy. This is something that we shouldn't do. But of course, it is the most natural thing to do. So we're going to go through this and we're going to start with preconception. We're going to go prenatal. Then we'll go into the baby's development and try to give you a pretty consummate understanding of how to raise children in accord with natural hygiene. Okay? And this lecture is probably going to be broken up into two parts. Okay? So there will be a subsequent video to follow this one a bit later on. All right, back into the secret classroom we go. And just as a last note, I'm sorry that the lighting in this room is not the greatest. My old light burnt out on me. So anyway, hopefully the lighting is not what's important here. The important thing is going to be what I'm going to share with you. So please excuse the rugged way I kind of shoot with pretty crappy equipment. So anyway, hopefully you guys can get past that. And yeah, let's get started. Okay, so first little section we're going to get into here is preconception. All right, now family planning. Family planning couldn't be more important, obviously. Sometimes what we miss though is the profound responsibility that is incumbent on the parent far prior to any planned conception date for the children. Okay. Health and wellness, like I always talk about, works slowly. All right. It works on the momentum principle, and it takes a while for the body to respond to conditions that we give it, that healing and rejuvenation is now to take place. And we do that by following a natural, raw, species-specific diet to the exclusion of all things that hurt our bodies, all the conventional, cultural food contrivances that hurt our bodies. So, if we are planning to start a family, then ideally what we want is several years of nutritional dietary reform prior to conception. Okay? This is very important. Now, I should also mention, I'm just going to be giving you the information, right? I'm just giving you the information. At no point should anybody interpret this as judgmental. At no point should anybody interpret it as a justification to feel guilty that some of these guidelines were not followed. Okay, get rid of all of that. This is just the data. It's just the information. And we can use it in the best way that's befitting for our lives. Okay? So preconception, ideally what we want is we want at least 1 year, at the very least, we want 1 year of dietary nutritional reform. Okay, by the mother. The father should be doing dietary reform just the same. Okay, we need to have two healthy individuals coming together and giving the child the best chances, creating the best conditions for the propagation of life. Okay, so we want ideally 1 year in preparation to eliminate all of the influences, or as many of the influences that it's in our power to control. Eliminate all the influences that are going to impair the body tissues. So at least a year where we have lived comfortably and adapted comfortably to a life without the intake of cooking oils, the intake of harsh seasonings like salt and peppers, and other very, very harsh stimulating seasonings. Processed foods. Processed foods cannot be in the picture. They simply cannot. Processed grains, processed wheats, any processed food. We definitely want to be kicking the meat habit or the meat addiction. We definitely don't want any dairy. We definitely don't want dairy in our lives. We want to be rid of all of these things. We want to be living on a whole food only diet for at least 1 year. Let our bodies clean out completely. Fasting is going to be an indispensable tool in the house cleaning process. Okay. The temple is being prepared for the ceremony to come, for the life-giving ceremony to come. We need to sweep the floors. We need to wash the throne. We need to clean out all of the nonsense that's in the temple and make the most suitable housing for the new life to come. All right. So as early as possible, years preferably, but at least a year of very serious dietary reform before we're actually conceiving. So within that 1 year period, you definitely want to have a couple of short fasts under your belt, 3 to 5 days, or you could have one longer fast, at least one longer fast of maybe 2 weeks or so. Water fasts. Those are extremely useful, and you're not going to want to do at least longer fasts when you're pregnant. We'll get into that. We'll get into the prenatal stuff in just a bit. Every time you fast, you have to follow up the fast with a diet of raw fruits, not necessarily exclusively, but in the short term, raw fruits exclusively, like on the day that you break your fast and maybe the next day after. And then, of course, a reintroduction of soft leafy green vegetables, nuts and seeds as you need them. I should also include sprouts in that general category of raw whole foods. So sprouts is definitely useful here too. Medications. Remember, I'm speaking in ideals here. I'm giving ideal scenarios, ideal circumstances, okay? Just because I'm speaking in the, ideal circumstances doesn't mean that we have to get down on ourselves if we weren't able to satisfy these. So just please, I hope everyone understands this. This is not like a judgmental thing. I'm just giving it how it is. As the natural hygienists would have taught, Herbert Shelton being probably the most well-renowned hygienist of the 20th century. Medications. Okay. You do not want to have any medications in your life for that entire first year training period or reform period. At least 1 year of no medications, no pharmaceuticals, no pills, no nothing, if possible. Okay. This is the ideal scenario. Never, ever. Okay. Very important. Never conceive shortly after taking antibiotics or coming off of birth control pills. Okay. This is very important. What does shortly after mean? 2 to 3 months. I would say more. And of course, usually we always want to err on the side of much longer. Okay. Giving the body as much of a chance as possible. But you do not want to be conceiving if in the last 2 to 3 months you have taken antibacterials, antivirals, birth control pills, or any other variety of harsh, toxic pharmaceutical drugs. Okay. You don't, or really recreational drugs, smoking of any kind, marijuana, all of it. All right. The smoking of burning anything. You want to be done with this stuff. Okay. Well before you're even thinking of conceiving. Okay. And yes, marijuana is not some magical exception to this rule. You don't want to be smoking. So that's it. It's a very general thing for preconception. Now, as for how to approach detox and diet and whatnot, well, yeah, that's for other videos, right? That's just the general lifestyle approach to healing, cleansing, eating, aligning with your physiological restrictions and endowments. So we do all of that work, and we want a year at least of living comfortably in that space before we're even thinking of conception. Okay. We've got to prepare the body temple for what is to come, both the mother and the father. Okay. Next little thing to consider. And this is a bit of a weird one. Mating season. What? Yeah. Many organisms, animals on the planet seem to be tied to a mating season. They seem to have this innate understanding of where they should be mating, okay, for the production of offspring. And as it may turn out, as it turns out, human beings also have ideal times where children should be born. Okay? So we also have a mating season. As much as nobody wants to hear that. And I get it, nobody wants to hear that. Of course, that doesn't mean that you can't make love to people whenever you want. It's just that, if we're looking at raising children, yeah, we want to do that in particular times. Here's why. Okay, so when ideally should babies be born? Ideally, to make the best of conditions that support and nourish the new child. Ideally, you're looking at having your babies born, this might not be a surprise, in the springtime, summertime, okay? Spring, summer is the global time of new growth, new development. Things are blossoming and growing into fruition during the springtime and the summertime. So this should immediately make intuitive sense to anybody listening. Sunshine is extremely important. And so babies that get less sunshine will be more prone to a whole set of lifestyle related disorders, troubles, impairments, right? So the sunshine hitting the baby's skin is extremely important for the early years of life. As the brunt of development is happening, as the body's being constructed, yeah, you want the sunlight to be involved in that process, just like it is in the growth of vegetation. Sunshine also helps with the assimilation of nutrients from the mother's milk, and then subsequently from food when the baby's ready to be eating food. Breast milk tends to be, when examined, of higher quality in the spring and the summer as opposed to the winter months. Maybe there's some relationship to the less sunlight that you'd find in the winter. And I'll get to the tropics as well, because this would tend to apply more for the temperate regions of the planet. So if we're living where we don't have perpetual sunlight throughout the year, then we would probably want to pay closer attention to this. Shelton referred to a Professor Pinter and Dr. Ferriano, who did a study at a teacher's college in New York, and they studied 17,500 children born from January to February, compared with those born in the summer. And the summer kids, they found, were typically of higher intelligence, right? Found that to be pretty interesting. Okay, so does this apply if you're living in the tropics? If you're living in the tropics where you don't have this seasonality issue, then you're probably fine. Now, the book didn't really get into this, but it's that sunshine factor that is so critical in the early years. So if you're living in the tropics and you always have access to the right nutrition for the mother and good amount of sunshine, then you can probably afford to have your babies at various times of the year without worrying too much about the mating season.
This is something I have never seen before. It really gets into the nervous system and into the brain. But this blue beast, I have no idea what this is. I have absolutely no clue. This is so weird.
I was curious to ask you about this study that looked at 2,000 samples and found these structures, and with every passing day, it's becoming more and more evident these are not clots.
They are telling us they're putting plug-and-play applications inside of the human being. Now, this is what you say about your cell phone, your smartphone. This is what you do on a computer device, operating system. In fact, they say the word operating system. It's not by chance that we have tech entrepreneurs that are involved. I've looked at all three manufacturers. In all of the samples, I've seen evidence of superconducting material.
Okay, so we've gone through some preconception, we've gone through this little spiel on mating season. Again, something that you don't really find too often. It's not a very popular topic in modern culture. But now let's get into the mother during pregnancy, okay? So we'll get into the prenatal stuff. Now, the most common thing that you hear with prenatal care is that you need to eat more. You need to eat a lot more during pregnancy. You need to eat more. You need to eat for two because you've got a growing child inside of you, and you need to increase the bulk amount of nutrition that comes in order to furnish the body with everything it needs to provide for the child. This is not true. This is a myth. The distinction needs to be made between nourishment and sheer bulk quality. So the mother needs to be well nourished. Yes, of course she does. She needs to be well nourished, but she does not need to increase the sheer bulk of food that's coming into the diet. Unless of course, that it's specifically called for. But the issue here is that because we're very typically in modern culture jumping into a pregnancy where we're still at the crushing mercy of stimulated habits from adulterated, cooked, and processed foods, we are called for more hunger drive likely during pregnancy because the body is screaming for nutrition and nourishment, which it cannot get from the adulterated foodstuffs of culture. So again, this is where that initial process of dietary reform is so important. You need to be you want to be operating with a clean system way before your pregnancy, so that when you are pregnant, your system is now efficient. It can now absorb very much nutrition from less food than prior to you making the health reform decision. Okay, so throw eating for two out the window. Obviously, if you do find more hunger while you're pregnant, well, yeah, obviously you eat more, but it's not a call to intellectually start eating more, because that's inevitably what we do. Yeah, for sure. There are going to be periods of time where if you're pregnant, then you might have a hankering for some other type of nutrition over and above what you might have normally had. And that's fine. So you obviously respond to that by eating wholesome natural food. Understand where I'm going with this is that because we have this concept that we have to eat more, what happens is because the concept starts to inform decisions in a way that you might start to justify satisfying false hunger cravings, try to rationalize and justify your adulterated habits and say, oh, well, I'm pregnant, right? And therefore this is okay. Whereas if you weren't pregnant, you wouldn't do that. So because that concept of I need to eat for two is there, sometimes what it would do is it would lead you to eat more than you're actually being called to eat. Okay, that's the point here. So if genuine hunger is felt, then obviously you satisfy that with eating, right? Eating the right clean foods. But you don't want to go over and beyond what you're naturally just called to eat in the first place, right? Which means it's not really that much different from regular everyday eating. All right, let's get into the particulars of the diet. What should the mother be eating when she is pregnant with a child? Okay. And this might not come as a surprise, but nothing ideally changes in regards to the type of food that an organism would eat when it's pregnant as opposed to when it's not. You are still looking for the proper combinations of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, all coming holistically from whole foods only, and only whole foods in their unadulterated form that is suitable for your particular palate as a species. In human terms, what that looks like is a high percentage of the diet coming from fruits, Okay, all and any fruits. It comes from leafy green vegetables and other vegetables that are edible and raw and able to be palated and enjoyed raw. It looks like nuts and seeds, and it also looks like sprouts. Any of these whole raw foods, these should make up the nutrition of the mother during pregnancy. Because, as many of us have heard many times now, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Right? Nothing changes. What is good for the sick person is good for the healthy person. What is good for the healthy person is good for the sick person. You do not need to poison a sick person in order to get them to the state of health, because that makes no sense. What a sick person does is engage themselves in healthy eating and healthy rest habits, and thus they convalesce back to health. What that also means for the healthy person is that the healthy person, if they do the same thing that got the sick person well, then if they just keep doing the same thing, then they'll always be in a state of health, right? Eating a species-specific diet is going to be the best that the organism can possibly do. So you wouldn't want to make changes as to what is being eaten, or the type, okay, the type of food being eaten, just because you're pregnant. All that would happen is you would modify or regulate how much of that you eat based on your hunger, your hunger changes and fluctuations, okay? And of course, because we know that eating for two is a myth, the mother still has to be just very comfortable knowing that if she's not hungry, then not eating is a wise decision. No need to keep yourself full or keep yourself stuffed or satiated throughout the day because you know that you're pregnant, right? That is not what you'd want to do. Okay, prenatal care also includes plenty of exercise, plenty of good exercise. You want to be having a good mix of strength exercises. You want to have a good mix of leisurely activities that move the body. You would like to have the inclusion of some strength exercises playing a role here. It doesn't mean you have to have a gym membership or anything. It just means the addition of calisthenics exercises or even body weight exercises, weighted exercises if you want. Of course, no one's saying that you can't include those. You'd probably want to avoid long distance running and sustained steady state long duration cardiovascular exercise. You'd probably want to avoid that in the prenatal term, but plenty of other types of exercise. You're also looking at getting plenty of fresh air, plenty of sleep and rest. You also need to be free from as much as possible. I know obviously this is an ideal situation, but as much as possible, mother needs to be at ease. She needs to be unstressed. She needs to be at emotional calm and emotional poise and emotional equanimity. The emotional state, it's more important than people give credence to. During the prenatal term, the impressions that the mother is receiving or perceiving, I should say, from the outside world, okay, and the thoughts that enter her mind in a consistent way, in a consistent basis. Thoughts that influence or inform the type of emotions, that the spectrum of emotions that she feels throughout the prenatal term. What is happening is these are creating waves of energetic information that suffuse through her entire body. And the baby gets and receives these waves of information, thought and emotional waves of information. And these are going to impress on the baby the character of the world that it's going to be born into, or the type of world that's going to be born into, so as to more ideally prepare the child for whatever that is. Okay, I'll have to repeat this in another way, just so I know that you guys get it. Let's just say, for the sake of example, that we live in a world where at any given time, a mutated frilled lizard could simply just manifest itself into existence and attack you. All right, let's just say that we lived in that world. Any given time, just poop, mutated frilled lizard. It would be good for the child to be prepared for that. So what happens is the mother is walking around 24/7 on edge, okay? She's developing and cultivating a nervous tension because when there's that familiar sound of the time-space continuum contorting and bending, which alerts her to the fact that there is going to be a frilled lizard just manifesting out of thin air, right? hearing those sounds and whatnot, it triggers her body to be on edge or to run or do something. Consistently, the mother feels like that throughout the entire prenatal period. So what that does is it primes the child to keep that nervous tension so as to prepare the child ideally for the world that it's going to be born into. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope I packaged that up. So that being the case, the emotional state for the mother is very, very important. All right? And when we are creating human beings, it's that period where we find the first set of variables and factors that can influence whether the child is depressed or anxious. There is an influence in the mother's entire emotional landscape, right? That is going to inform what type of human being comes out on the other end. Does mom go through a really, really difficult divorce while she's pregnant? You better believe that's going to have an effect on the mind of the child. You better believe it. Is there violence? Is there abuse in the relationship? You better believe that's going to influence the mind of the child. When the mother eats her meals, what's happening? Is she calm? Is she poised? Is she worried? Is she stressed? Is there tension? Is she getting undisturbed sleep? Blah, blah, blah. On and on it goes, right? Okay, these are all very, very crucial elements that go into making the new human being. We talked about diet earlier on, but coffee, okay, tea, the caffeinated teas, green tea, black tea, that kind of stuff. Coffee and tea. These are things that you do not want to include in the lifestyle of the mother. Why? Because they're stimulants. Not only are they toxic, but they can inform emotional states as well. So, you just want to avoid coffee. You want to avoid all coffee and the caffeinated, stimulating teas. Let's talk about fasting. Can a pregnant mother fast? Or is it a good idea? Yes. If we're talking about short fasts from 2 to 3 days in length, yes, it is a good idea. It is a healthy thing to do in the earlier period of the pregnancy, okay? You probably would want to avoid doing these 2 to 3 day fasts in month 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If we're talking about the first 2 months, first 2 to 3 months of pregnancy, it is very, very healthy and very helpful to do short 2 to 3 day fasts. So the reason these 2 to 3 day fasts are a good idea in the early periods of pregnancy is because 2 to 3 day fasts enhance the body's ability to pull nutrition from food. The whole body, the whole digestive machinery and elimination machinery works much, much better on the other side of a 2 to 3 day fast. So you are, in essence, getting more nutrition by fasting, all right? Again, as long as we're not going into like the 5 to 10 day mark for fasts, you don't want to do that when you're pregnant. You might want to avoid that for any time during the pregnancy. But yeah, definitely short 2 to 3 day fasts during the early months of pregnancy are quite well and good. Probably also something that you would want guidance on if you have to go to a fasting retreat, a fasting center. Have a professional monitor you just for safety if you like, if that makes you feel comfortable, obviously, because the comfort is important. So the last thing you want is someone who is newer to fasting, having questions and guessing and just being anxious or worried because they just heard, oh, someone told me to fast, maybe I'll do it, and they do it, but they don't have any of the whys understood, so they're just unsure of themselves. In that case, fasting is not for you. It needs to be a very calm and comfortable approach, right? You need to know that you're being taken care of. So just to reiterate again, these fasts are a good idea because nutrition is enhanced. Blood flow is enhanced. Metabolic machinery is all enhanced because of these short fasts. Let's talk about nausea. Nausea is not a symptom of pregnancy, or at least it doesn't have to be. We don't all get nausea because we are pregnant. That is the wrong attribution. Nausea during pregnancy is the body's very intelligent response to the conditions of pregnancy. And it's making an effort to purify and fumigate and clear out all the poisons, as many as the poisons that it can, from the body in order to create the best conditions for the child. Which again takes us back to the preparation phase where we're dealing with all of these adulterated habits, where we're getting rid of that, we're eliminating them from the picture, and we go through those fasts that make us nauseous, but way before we're pregnant, so that when we are pregnant, there is much less encumbering waste material trapped in the system to deal with during the pregnancy. Because the pregnancy is going to incite a deeper need, a deeper yearning by the internal intelligence of the mother's body to cleanse, basically, right? To clean out the system, to make conditions as ideal as possible. Nausea or sickness very often comes with a loss of appetite for the mother, okay? And when that happens, you have to obey that command by your body. When you lose your appetite when you're pregnant because of nausea or sickness or whatever, do not eat. You can't eat. It's the same prescription for when you are not pregnant, right? Male or female, and you get sick. You have a flu or a cold or whatnot. The best way to go about navigating the illness is to not eat. Anyone who's had a flu, they know this. You lose your appetite. Why? Because your body doesn't want to waste energy digesting food. So when you're pregnant and you experience nausea or any other type of cold or flu or whatnot, and you lose your appetite a little bit, it is not time to freak out. It is not time to say, oh my God, I'm sick, but I need to be eating. No, you do not need to be eating. You need to be abstaining. You need to go to bed, rest, avoid the TV, avoid news, whatever. Just go to sleep and rest. And that's it. Eat only when you're comfortable and feeling good and your appetite has returned, obviously. And the last thing we're going to get into in this part 1 of this developmental series is sounds. The types of music that you subject yourself to is very, very, very important. The common denominator between all manifested things in reality is a structure of sound and vibration. Okay? Sound and vibration makes the universe go round. And the type and quality of the music that we might listen to for pleasure, right, is and can be very influential. Music, as we know, informs emotional states. It informs certain thought forms to be generated. Music, sound, frequency. It's an information construct, right? It's an information medium. And sound and frequency actually physically, provably structure physical reality. So if the nature of the sound frequencies that the baby is being exposed to are chaotic or disruptive or out of harmony, then you are creating those very same conditions in the child's mind, okay? Or in the child's body. However it manifests. I could never tell you exactly how that manifests. We know that these things have to have effect. They have to, because we live in the world of effects. Listen to classical music, listen to soft music, listen to energetic but melodic music. Melody and harmony is very important. It's something that I'd have to get into in a different lecture, but heavy metal rock music. I know that there are music preferences, okay? We imagine it to be a subjective thing, music preference. And it is, of course, to a large extent. However, there is an objective musical goodness that exists in reality, an objective musical harmony that would be recognized by all intelligent beings who are perceiving that type of music. We have the ability to know the difference between that which is good and harmonious music and that which is not. And frequencies that are discordant or that violate very precise mathematical harmonies of music are going to have unideal effects. If your mom and you're holding a speaker to your womb and blasting heavy metal to your baby for months and months on end, I mean, let's just say we're not going to be fashioning a Buddha. That's for sure. I'm being a little facetious. Obviously, I can't actually say with certainty that you would not create a Buddha. It's just not ideal. Okay, it is not an ideal type of environment for a child to be growing in. Okay, everyone, that's going to do it for now. Make sure to stay tuned so that we catch part 2 of this series when it's released. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you for joining me in the secret classroom here on the FreeMelon Society. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you like videos like this, and help me out. Leave me a like, leave me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you on the next one. Okay? Thank you so much, guys. I love you very much, and looking forward to seeing you again. Okay? Mwah. Okay. Bye-bye.